Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to please find a seat? Welcome you to take a chair unless you want to stand through the whole event. Well, welcome this glorious Washington, D.C. afternoon to the launch of Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea. In my judgment or assessment, anytime we can talk about U.S.-Korea relations and bring Americans and Koreans and others together is a great day, but it's a particularly auspicious and special time to have this program. The first reason, of course, is the 70th anniversary of the U.S.-Korea alliance. And second, very shortly, in fact, in just a few days ahead, President Yoon of Korea is expected here for the first state visit by a Korean president with our president since 2011. So I think it's not just another visit, but a really important state visit. The third reason I think this is more special than most times on U.S.-Korea relations is we have had a wonderful set of partners at the East-West Center to work with on this fourth edition of the publication. We've had the Chey Institute in Korea, and Ambassador Park has flown all the way from Korea to be with us and make some remarks today. We're very grateful to your counsel, to your guidance, and your team. We're also very grateful indeed to the Korea Economic Institute, our partners there, Ambassador Kathleen Stevens, who is the president, and we have with us today the vice president, Mr. Mark Takala, who's going to make some remarks as Kathleen cannot join us. And then finally, you probably don't know this part, which is that it's a special day because we have the East-West Center president in town, and she's made a special journey. And to cap it off on sort of a cherry on top, we have the entire board of governors, or many of the board of governors of the East-West Center in town for their annual meeting. So it's a really special time. And I want to welcome all of you. There's a copy of the publication. It's also, of course, available online. I would ask you to distribute it widely. We're going to be listening very carefully if any of the words and numbers and statements in the publication enter into President Biden's or President Yoon's remarks, which we will be studying very carefully. But really welcome, and I hope you'll stay for what will be a series of wonderful comments from experts, U.S. officials, Korean officials, and then we'll have a nice reception, including moving out of doors. But it gives me great pleasure now to welcome our president of the East-West Center, Major General Retired Suzanne Verslem. Susie.
Thank you so much, Satu, and good afternoon and aloha from Hawaii to all of you. What an honor and pleasure, Ambassador Park and Vice President Takala. Thank you so much for your partnership in this very important publication. And on behalf of our distinguished Board of Governors who are here, it is such an honor and pleasure to be a part of this Korea Matters for America. You know, coming from Hawaii, we know very much how much Korea matters. In fact, on our board, we actually had one of the first Korean American Chief Justices, Chief Justice Moon, who has been celebrated in Hawaii as changing the face and fabric and the contributions of Korean Americans. But in addition to that, of course, is the exchange. So we're excited in Hawaii, where we see the contributions in everyday life with our Lieutenant Governor, born in Korea, and also is one of the first Korean Americans born in Korea to be in the executive branch of any state in our nation. And we are proud to present our Korea Matters for Hawaii at the Korean Studies Center at the University of Hawaii on May 3rd. And then we will follow on to Seoul to show why America matters to Korea. There is no question that this alliance is strong, and we're going to hear from a host of wonderful speakers today. The fact that this room is full and a day after voting is testament to it. But this is a long journey and conversation. We didn't just come here today, and the East-West Center is proud to be a part of it. We are a place that develops and equips leaders to understand this. We convene impactful dialogues like we are today, We partner with the Pacific, like the entire Indo-Pacific, and Korea has been a major part of that, investing in the Pacific. When we look at many of our partners, we look at Korean institutions who have helped to bolster Korea. And we foster environmental solutions and support good governance. And Korea has been at the forefront of a lot of those investments. In fact, when we look at the 71,000 alumni from the East-West Center in the early years of the 60s and 70s of the East-West Center, you wouldn't have to look far if you went to Korea to see alumni of the East-West Center. So really excited when we go to Seoul to connect with many of our alumni who have done great things to change the world. So thank you for being here. Thank you for commitment to change the world and bolster this relationship with Korea and America. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. I should have probably introduced myself too, but my name card was up here. Satu LeMay from the East-West Center. Let me go straight to our second partner, which is it represents the Korea Economic Institute. He's the vice president. Delighted to have him. We've done a number of Korea programs together across the US and in Korea. So welcome to you, Mark Takala.
Thank you, Satu. First, I want to say it's an honor for KEI to be associated with East-West Center and the Chey Institute on this publication. I can't think of any two organizations we'd rather be partnered with. Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea is being published at a crucial moment in the relationship. There are important questions being asked. First, how much confidence do we have in the ability of the United States and the Republic of Korea to deter North Korea? Second, how can the United States and the Republic of Korea best deal with the risk of engaging or not engaging with China? Third, how should South Korea and the United States foster, adapt to, or regulate emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence and quantum computing? These are serious questions that deserve serious consideration, but none can be answered successfully without taking into context the overall relationship. This new publication that's being launched today provides an essential context and deserves to be read widely. I'd like to congratulate those who contributed to the splendid report. I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. And I look forward to learning from this excellent panel we have coming up now. So thank you.
We also have a Korean partner for this effort based in Korea, and we're very grateful to them. They fixed all our translation errors. They double and triple checked our commas. Please don't do it here and give me a heart attack if you find an error. After the fourth or fifth reading, my eyes began to not see numbers and transpose numbers. But we're grateful to them. And we have with us the president of the Chey Institute, Ambassador Park In-Cook. Thank you, Ambassador Park.
Good afternoon, Deputy Assistant Secretary Brian Frick, Palima Fan, and U.S. Senior Representative Matt Murray, and Ambassador Jo Yoon, and the Honorable Dr. Ami Bera, Brian Schatz, and Young Kim. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the launch of the fourth edition of the Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea. A remarkable project that maps out the past, present, and future of the U.S.-Korea relationship. This year's edition provides up-to-date information on trade, investment, employment, diplomacy, security, tourism, and people-to-people connection between the two countries at the national, state, and local levels. Moreover, this collaborative efforts highlight the strengths and the resilience of U.S.-Korea relationship, which is built on a robust foundation of shared values and vision to achieve durable peace and co-prosperity. It is a timely and critical reminder of Korea's vital role for the United States and U.S. pivotal engagement in the Pacific region, enhancing awareness and understanding the value of each other's role has become more vital than ever before. In recent years, we have witnessed the numerous geopolitical and geo-economic crises, including Russia's unlawful invasion of Ukraine, power consolidation by President Xi Jinping, and rising cross-strait tension, ever-increasing North Korean nuclear and missile provocations, and an exacerbated global supply chain crisis. It is within this context that the historic summit will take place between the two nations next week. As many of you are already aware, President Biden will host President Yoon for the first state visit to the United States to celebrate the 70th anniversary of US-Korea alliance. The two leaders are expected to discuss a wide range of bilateral and global issues of mutual interest. As we navigate these challenges together, I hope this booklet will stand as an unswerving testament to the long-standing partnership in the area of economic security and democracy between Korea and the United States. Today, we are here to celebrate the culmination of the hard work, dedication, and collaborations of experts in Korea and the United States, particularly partnership between East-West Center, Korea Economic Institute of America, and the Chey Institute for Advanced Studies. Taking this opportunity, if I introduce briefly my institute. Launched in 2018, the Chey Institute for Advanced Studies has been a driving force for knowledge sharing and academic exchange program with world-leading counterparts in the United States and around the world. The Chey Institute focuses on three critical research areas. The first, identifying geopolitical risk in Northeast Asia and beyond. Second, examining the opportunities and challenges posed by cutting-edge scientific innovation. And third, exploring the impact of scientific innovation on geopolitical risk. As a signature project of the Chey Institute, the Trans-Pacific Dialogue, or TPD, is an annual Track 1.5 conference held in Salamander Resort in suburban Virginia. The TPD served as a unique platform for experts, policymakers, and stakeholders to share their views and insight on the most pressing issues facing the Trans-Pacific region. It is a vital forum for fostering mutual understanding, building trust, and promoting cooperation and suggesting future action plan. In December of last year, the Chey Institute hosted its second TPD with more than 60 prominent scholars, opinion leaders, and high-level government officials from US, Korea, and Japan, including NSC Coordinator Kurt Campbell, the Secretary Chuck Hagel, and Professor John Nye at Harvard, among many others. Over 3 days, the conference covered diverse topics critical to the Trans-Pacific region, including US-China strategic competition, the impact of the Ukraine war on the US global strategy, and North Korean nuclear crisis, and scientific innovation and its geopolitical impact, and the future of global supply chain, as well as Korea-Japan cooperation on major global issues. I hope the upcoming TPD conference in December of this year will also produce a tangible result and shed light on how US, Korea, Japan can better address these common challenges. I also hope the insight gained from today's rollout session on US-Korea relations will be properly incorporated into the next TPD process. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all authors, editors, and contributors who made this booklet possible. Your hard work and dedication have resulted in the truly outstanding publication that will undoubtedly serve as an invaluable resource for years to come. I would also like to send my special thanks to the President Susan Vares-Loom of the East-West Center and Ambassador Cassie Stevens for their unswerving dedication to the improvement of U.S.-Korea relations and commitment to the timely publication of this booklet. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Ambassador Park, and for making the journey here. And of course, we look forward in mid-May to seeing you in Seoul for the launch in Korea. We've heard from our partners, but also critically important are the officials on both sides who make the relationship run at the government-to-government level. And we're deeply gratified, despite the upcoming state visit, that they've taken a little bit of time to be with us today. I think it's very important to hear their perspectives. And first, I'd like to invite to the podium Ji-Hoon Kim, who's the counselor, chief of the congressional section at the Embassy of the Republic of Korea, to make some remarks. Thank you, Ji-Hoon.
Thank you. President Varislam and Vice President Limaye, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly delighted to be here and extend my congratulations to the East-West Center, along with the Korea Economic Institute and Chey Institute, on the launch of this updated Korea Matters for America and America Matters for Korea. And this is not just any ordinary reference book that will end up collecting dust on the bookshelf. And let me tell you why. As chief of the congressional section of the embassy, what I do is meeting with people from the Congress, making friends with them, and occasionally connecting my ambassador to House representatives and senators. And well, connecting ambassadors to members of the Congress is not as easy as it looks. Each congressman receives dozens of emails every day. And through the scheduler, he learns the contents. Caucus meetings, I got to do that. Fundraising events, yes, I need money. District events, we got to win their votes. Interview requests from journalists, let's go on TV. And all of a sudden, he learns a meeting with a South Korean ambassador to discuss North Korea. I don't know about that. Isn't that a typo for North Dakota? I don't like Kim Jong-un anyway. What's next? So, to be honest with you, I've been rejected by more congressmen than girls in my whole life. But one day, an American friend of mine told me that Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea comes in handy, and he uses it to help his friends and colleagues to understand Korea more. I read it, scrolled down on the website. Boy, oh boy, did I hit the jackpot. So giddy up. When I met senators and congressmen next time, I said, Senator, did you know that your state exports $4 billion to Korea every year? I can meet with your ambassador. That's what he said. Congressman, did you know that your district has 1,500 students from Korea? Well, consider it approved. That's how I got these meetings secured. Little did they know, though, that I had this crystal ball hidden underneath. So to the authors and contributors of Korea Matters for America and America Matters for Korea, I thank you so much for your hard work. It provides combined coverage of the historical, political, economic, and cultural aspects of our bilateral relationship, and how timely and magnificent it is for this edition to come out just 4 days before my president visits this town, and in this 70th anniversary of the Korea-US alliance. And lastly, in today's complex geopolitical landscape, navigating through the challenges requires comprehensive information, including from this book and also companion. Korea Matters for America and America Matters for Korea will certainly help you understand how close and how tight-knit Koreans and Americans are. It'll help you, whoever you are, members, staffers from Congress, policymakers, journalists, scholars, anyone interested in Korea and America, to grasp what it truly means and how exciting it is to go together. So congratulations once again on this remarkable achievement. Thank you.
Over drinks, Jihoon and I are going to discuss possible future employment in PR for the East-West Center. But let's wait till we get to the wine. It gives me great pleasure to introduce now from the US side a series of officials, beginning with our senior official for APEC and a good friend of the East-West Center. And as if he's busy enough this year hosting APEC for the United States and the Korea and this upcoming summit, he's taken a few minutes. Matt Murray, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Satu, and thank you very much to the East-West Center, to the Korea Economic Institute of America, and the Chey Institute of Advanced Studies for this very special opportunity to highlight the importance of the U.S.-Korea partnership, which, as has been said, is perfectly timed as we await the arrival of President Yoon and his delegation next week. To East-West Center President Suzy Varaslam and Dr. Satu Lamay, to KEI Vice President Mark Tokola, and to Ambassador Park, thank you for your leadership on the important role your organizations play in developing and showcasing this important alliance. Since 1953, the alliance between the United States and the Republic of Korea has been the linchpin of peace, security, and prosperity for Northeast Asia, the broader Indo-Pacific, and beyond. As we celebrate the 70th anniversary of this historic alliance, we look to advance a future-focused agenda that reaffirms and defends democratic values, good governance, and fundamental freedoms around the world. Our military and defense ties are ironclad and unwavering, but so too are our bonds based on mutual trust and shared economic and democratic values. Our increasing economic, technological, diplomatic, and people-to-people ties are equally strong and enduring. The Biden-Harris administration is working closely with the ROK and other allies and partners to combat COVID-19 and address the climate crisis, to defend and promote democratic values at home and abroad, and to produce and secure the technologies of the future. The Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea report does an excellent job of describing the depth and breadth of the US-Korea relationship, covering an incredibly wide range of topics. Not only does the report lead off with the fundamental importance of our shared economic, military, and democratic partnerships, as well as our shared enduring commitment to democratic values, but it also emphasizes Korea's growing global and regional leadership role as it strives to maintain peace and stability around the Indo-Pacific region and the world. Speaking personally, I've grown to appreciate our partnership with Korea over the past 2.5 years in my own roles here in Washington, first as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Trade Policy and Negotiations in 2020 and 2021, and now as U.S. Senior Official for Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. During these assignments, interestingly, while I may not have had a job description that focused on the U.S.-Korea economic relationship, I quickly discovered in these positions that in reality, I had no choice but to focus on the US-Korea economic relationship because Korea plays such an emerging leadership role on so many shared economic priorities. As Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Trade Policy and Negotiations, for example, I discovered in my first meeting with my Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs counterpart that we were tracking 11 lines of effort in the US ROK Senior Economic Dialogue. 11. I met with many other governments during that time, which did not have nearly as impactful a depth and breadth of economic engagement. The Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea report highlights many of these lines of effort: trade and investment ties, information and communication technology interdependencies, supply chain resiliency, climate change cooperation, pandemic response, and our historically strong people-to-people ties, including tourism and students. I know my colleagues from the Department of Commerce and U.S. Trade Representative's Office will cover many of the trade and investment linkages in their remarks in a moment, but I will note that I felt incredibly fortunate recently to be able to tour the SK Battery America plant in Commerce, Georgia, just 2 weeks ago, an investment of nearly $2.6 billion, which is contributing to the U.S. high-tech ecosystem and creating the jobs of the future, like so many other Korean investors across the United States. In my current role as U.S. senior official for APEC, I've also seen the outsized positive impact Korea makes in that organization, particularly by Korea's commitment to supporting U.S. priorities during our APEC host year this year, as well as Korea's own commitment to host APEC in 2025. We depend on our Korean colleagues in APEC to be a consistent voice in support of international rules, norms, and standards on discussions in APEC on trade and investment, innovation and digitalization, and strong, balanced, secure, sustainable, and inclusive growth, as we work together with the other 19 APEC economies toward our vision of an open, dynamic, resilient, and peaceful Asia-Pacific community by 2040 for the prosperity of all our people and future generations. So I'll close with a story from my own family of how our future generations see their prospects for prosperity. In 2019, I was posted with the State Department at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and my son Daniel, who was 14 years old at the time, was on the robotics team at his school, and they traveled to Seoul for a competition. Daniel returned from his school trip with stories of how impressed he was with the technologies and innovation that he had seen in Seoul. I didn't think too much of it, though, until a few months later, when Daniel and I had a window of opportunity to travel together over a long weekend, and I asked Daniel where he might want to go. He didn't hesitate. I want to go back to Korea. That place is amazing. So thank you again to the East-West Center, the Korea Economic Institute for America, and the Chey Institute for Advanced Studies for your role in making sure all of us, like Daniel, understand and appreciate the unique and positive impact the United States and Korea have on each other, and no doubt will have far into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matt. We always appreciate you being here and for your comments. Our next speaker represents the International Trade Administration at the Department of Commerce. But before I just invite her up, I just want to say that she has been so impressive that she spoke at our last launch of Asia Matters. So we welcome you back again. And I also want to say that you have one of our former staff members on your team now. So we're sad to lose that particular staff member because she's wonderful, but we also know she's in a terrific place. And since we cooperate so closely with your International Trade Administration on preparing these reports, we're grateful that we have this continuing connection. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State of Commerce for Pamela Fan, please welcome.
Thank you, Satu, Susie, and especially to the East-West Center for allowing us to poach from your organization. I'd like to congratulate you, as well as the Korea Economic Institute and the Chey Institute for the update of this important publication. We have made reference to the fact that it is the 70th anniversary of the U.S.-Korea alliance, and this publication has made clear that the alliance is stronger than ever. And this relationship matters more than ever. What we have in Korea as a partner is a champion of democracy and rule of law, a fellow leading world economy, and a pioneer when it comes to leading edge technology and innovation. The numbers are compelling. In 2021, Korea was the United States' 6th largest goods trading partner, including in transportation equipment, chemicals, and high-tech equipment. The United States continues to see growing Korean foreign direct investment, which totaled nearly 72 billion in 2021, with major Korean investments in automotive components, industrial equipment, consumer electronics, and other sectors. It is no surprise then that the Department of Commerce is playing an active role in advancing the US-Korea commercial and trade relationship, and we're doing our part in contributing to the deepening of these relations. Last year, when President Biden visited Seoul for the meetings that he had with President Yoon there, the Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Raimondo, also accompanied him. This year, next week, actually, as we prepare for the second summit here in Washington on April 26th, the Secretary of Commerce will again be playing a critical and active role, including to convene the first ministerial level meeting of the supply chain and commercial dialogue. I should mention that this is a dialogue that was reflected in the 2022 Joint Leaders Statement and was officially announced and launched in Seoul when the Secretary was there with her counterpart, Moti Minister Lee. What we do under this dialogue is focused in particular on a number of work streams that are critical to the US and Korea commercial relationship. Number one, manufacturing resilience. There is a working group focused on manufacturing resilience and aimed at discussing the cooperation, facilitating the policy and the business exchanges in advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and also critical minerals. We have a second working group focused on dual-use export controls. It is a key work stream for us in order to build alignment between the United States and Korea with regard to Russia, Belarus trade restrictions and other increasingly important restrictions. As we look ahead, we are considering other areas where there is room for cooperation, including in particular the digital economy. As economies around the world embrace digital transformation, it is evident that this is a key area for engagement between our two countries, also with industry. Policy issues include everything from cybersecurity standards to regulatory approaches to cloud computing. And there are opportunities to discuss investment in this area as well, including building broadband manufacturing and high-speed internet, including across the United States under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. In addition to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the Chips and Science Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, are creating new opportunities for US-Korean partnership and for Korean investment here in the United States. It's really never been a better time to be working together, both to develop new and innovative technologies and to grow the opportunities and the jobs in the emerging technology sectors of the future. A week after President Yoon is here, we will actually be welcoming a robust Korean delegation to our Select USA Summit, which is focused on investment opportunities here in the United States. Finally, I should mention that the partnership that we have with Korea is important for our building of relations and the rules of the road for the broader region. So the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, or IPEF, is a new economic arrangement for the region in which we partner strategically, including with the Koreans. And Korea has been a key partner for us in aligning third countries in IPEF. I will conclude by going off script and taking a page from Matt's book and mentioning a story from my own family. We recently in my household watched the movie Trolls World Tour, which is a movie that touches on different musical genres, everything, and gives children exposure to everything from pop music to country music to smooth jazz to K-pop. And so when I talked to my children about their reactions to that movie and what their favorite genre of music was, my daughter Arden, who is 3 years old, said without hesitation, K-pop. So even to a 3-year-old, it is clear that Korea matters. And I thank you all for coming here today.
We're going to make a slight adjustment in our schedule to be able to accommodate a very special guest that we are very honored to have here, and that is the Honorable Senator from the state of Hawaii, Brian Schatz. He is the Senate co-chair on the Congressional Study Group on Korea. Obviously, a great supporter and friend of the East-West Center and a critical voice on U.S.-Asia relations, amongst many other issues. Senator Schatz.
Hello, everybody. Aloha. Thank you all for being here. And I want to thank Susie and Satu and everybody at the East-West Center for your work in supporting the relationship between the United States and the Republic of Korea, including through this new publication. I see some of my colleagues from the state of Hawaii, the former governor, the minority leader of the State House, the president of Punahou School, or retired president of Punahou School, and lots of other friends. So thank you for being here. This new publication is important by highlighting the many areas in which our countries work together in a clear and concise way. This publication will help people not immersed in foreign policy to understand our partnership's significance. Over time, this will help to grow our country's relationship, and a strong US-ROK relationship is essential. The Republic of Korea is one of our most important allies. We share a deep commitment to civil rights, to free elections, and press freedom. We work closely together to protect our citizens against military threats. Our strategic cooperation includes everything from increasing disaster preparedness in the Pacific Islands to eradicating disease in Southeast Asia. And commercial ties between our nations support nearly 500,000 jobs. This collaboration has helped to increase ROK investment in the United States nearly 200% in the last decade, and I anticipate this decade will be even better, including recent announcements of more than $20 billion for new electric vehicle battery and semiconductor facilities, and that is just in the wake of the Inflation Reduction Act. I anticipate these partnerships will grow and grow and grow. It has powered the Incheon-based Green Climate Fund, the world's largest climate fund in Incheon, which has funded more than 200 projects since 2015 to reduce our global carbon footprint and help to solve the climate crisis. And it's allowed our two countries to provide needed economic and humanitarian assistance in Ukraine. That's why a strong US-ROK relationship is so important, because it doesn't just benefit our two countries. Our partnership helps to promote democratic principles across the Indo-Pacific. It drives innovation and entrepreneurship, strengthening global supply chains and our allies' economies, and it protects our planet. To best collaborate on these goals, our two nations need to maintain a relationship of familiarity, friendship, and trust. And that's why the work everyone here does on a daily basis is so essential. And it's why organizations like the East-West Center are such valuable instruments for peace and for diplomacy. So congratulations to everyone on the rollout of this important publication. And I look forward to working with all of you and seeing you all next week during President Yoon's visit. And may we all continue working together to strengthen the US-ROK relationship and help to create a more prosperous and more peaceful world. Thank you so much.
We will have the opportunity, now that we've heard from Senator Schatz, so importantly, we will also have the opportunity to hear some video remarks from the Honorable Dr. Ami Bera, who is the study group chair in the House, along with the Honorable Young Kim, who's the co-chair on the House on the Korea side. But before we do, I do want to return to our run of show, and I am very grateful for your accommodation of Senator Schatz in the lineup. We have with us a colleague from the U.S. Trade Representative Office, and this is really important because we're talking about the new frontiers that the U.S.-Korea relationship is moving to. High technology, the issues Matt pointed out, the issues the Deputy Assistant Secretary Fan pointed out. But I remember 10 years ago when the process was the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement and where we've come from. So it's important also as we look towards the future to see where we've come from. And we're very delighted to have with us today, Bryant Paul Trick, Deputy Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Korea. Please welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to, of course, repeat the thanks to our hosts and to the East-West Center, KEI, and the Chey Institute, not only for organizing this event, but also for the publication of the booklet, which I'm sure is going to be very valuable for all of our work. So going last in this lineup is kind of beneficial because all the important stuff has been said already. But nevertheless, I would like to emphasize a couple of points that that previous speakers have picked up on. First of all, from a trade perspective, Korea really does matter to the United States, and the United States really does matter to Korea. As Pamela mentioned, Korea is our 6th largest trading partner, our 7th largest export market, 5th largest export market for agriculture. And the relationship, the trade relationship also remains vigorous. A good example of that is that even during the peak COVID years, when you saw a dramatic decline in world trade globally, bilateral trade between Korea and the United States increased even during those years. And this is a testament to the strength of the commercial ties, but also the complementarity of the supply chains and things like that, and the close cooperation between the two countries. So in addition to the importance of the relationship, I'd also like to put emphasis on the keyword of partnership. Korea is a vital partner for the United States in our ability to carry out the administration's own trade policy, in the sense of being important to our efforts to diversify supply chains. You know, Korea is a key supplier and partner in sectors like semiconductors, clean energy, vehicle electrification, and many others. And in addition to bilateral ties, we also work very closely with Korea in venues like APEC, like Matt Murray emphasized, also in the WTO, including in current efforts to look at ways to reform the WTO to make it more effective. And I'd also like to mention the continued importance of the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement, of KORUS, which remains very relevant today, 11 years after it came into force. It really lends tremendous stability to the relationship and is a strong foundation that we have for expanding our cooperation into new areas. The mechanisms of the KORUS FTA allow us to resolve trade issues that arise in a timely fashion. It allows us to communicate and talk together about new trade issues as they arise, both affecting each other and affecting the region and the globe. So it's really an essential aspect ongoing of the U.S.-Korea relationship. And finally, I'd like to pick up also on what Pamela mentioned, is the importance of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, which USTR leads one of the 4 pillars on the trade pillar. And we at USTR really appreciate Korea's strong contribution and commitment to these ongoing negotiations. They've been there from the beginning, which is something that we definitely understand that needs to be appreciated. The negotiations for IPEF will allow us to further address some elements, such as various digital elements that have come more into focus since the conclusion of KORUS 11 years ago. In other words, IPEF will enable us to modernize our trade relationship. And we also believe that Korea will play an important role within the negotiations in terms of making some of the less developed IPEF partners comfortable with some of the high standard commitments we are seeking. Korea can play a very important kind of bridging role, we believe, in the negotiations. So to conclude, I would simply say that once again, thank you for the publication of this booklet. It's going to be tremendously helpful to our work. Thank you for organizing this conference. And once again, Korea does matter to us and we matter to them. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trick, for joining us from the USTR office. Really, very important to have your insights on the key trade issues. As you know, an event like this cannot occur without the support of the congressional members. And as I outlined, we've had the support and the comments of Senator Schatz, the Senate co-chair on the Congressional Study Group on Korea. But we have two other supporters for this event. And those are Dr. Ami Bera from California, and the Honorable Young Kim representing California 40th. So they were not able to join us, and I always would prefer to have the congressional delegation up front, but because of the voting schedules and the timing, we tried to hope that they would be able to get away from their duties, but they weren't. But they have prepared videos, so I would ask that if you please respectfully observe their 2-3-minute videos and their comments for this event, because they did indeed make it possible, and every day they're working on Capitol Hill for the U.S.-Korea relationship. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Congressman Ami Bera of California's 6th Congressional District. I'm also co-chair of the Korea Caucus, as well as co-chair of the Congressional Study Group on Korea. I want to thank the East-West Center for their important work on Korea Matters for America and America Matters for Korea. As we celebrate the 70th anniversary of our alliance, this partnership, this friendship, and this alliance couldn't be more important. It's not just about protecting the peace, stability, and prosperity of East Asia, but it also is a partnership built on democracy, on values of human rights, on values of the rule of law. In this 21st century, when we see, an unprovoked invasion of Russia in Ukraine, we don't want that. We want to work together to continue to maintain an architecture of peace and stability throughout the world. That can be led by the United States and Korea working together. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Yang Kim, and I'm glad to welcome everyone to the official launch of the Korea Matters for America, America Matters for Korea publication. I'm excited that your publication will feature the rich history of trade, investment, employment, business, diplomacy, security, education, tourism, and people-to-people connections between the United States and Korea. The launch of your publication is especially timely as we mark 70 years of the United States-South Korea alliance based on our shared values of freedom and democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Our shared values are why the U.S.-ROK alliance has become one of the longest economic and security alliances. The need to promote our shared values and strengthen our trade partnership is more important now than ever before in today's 21st century economy, and especially as growing aggression from North Korea and the CCP's malign influence threaten a free and open Indo-Pacific. I hope this publication highlights the importance of our alliance, showing exactly why the U.S. and Korea matters to each other and strengthens our commitment to this partnership. As an immigrant from South Korea and as one of the first Korean American women serving in the United States Congress, I'm especially proud of the close ties between our two countries. And as chairwoman of the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I'll continue working tirelessly to strengthen our bilateral trade relationship. And I'm confident that with our shared history and common vision, the U.S.-Korea alliance will continue to thrive and play a critical role in advancing peace, prosperity, and security in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. So congratulations again, and I wish you all the best for your success. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Representatives Bera and Kim, and thank you for their support for this event and for U.S.-Korea relations. Now, this is about the point in a program, 45, 46 minutes in, when it seems appropriate to break to the bar, but not quite yet. We have, as part of our East-West Center kind of ethos and mission, in convening dialogues, we of course have our partners, we have officials from the countries involved, we have members of Congress and senators, but we also really like to have folks from NGOs, civil society, think tanks, universities, as part of the give and forth, back and forth in our engagement. And we have an all-star lineup of people on defense, on the US-Korea economic relationship, and on people-to-people ties. Those are only 15-minute sessions. And I would like to invite the first panel to join me, Dr. Sumi Terry, who is, and I'll introduce them. You have their full bios in the program. Dr. Sumi Terry, Director of the Asia Program and the Hyundai Motor Korea Foundation Center for Korean History and Public Policy at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Scott Snyder, who's the Senior Fellow for Korea Studies and Director of the Program on US-Korea Policy Council. And from Korea, currently on a Fulbright here at George Washington University. He's a professor at the Korea National Defense University, Youngjun Kim. Please welcome. These are meant to be, I hope this is on. Is it on? Yeah, okay, great. These are meant to be very informal, and I want to, not quite a fireside chat because there's not a fireplace behind, but nevertheless, 70th anniversary, lots of defense issues. Representative Kim made reference to some of the issues facing our alliance on the defense side. So starting with Dr. Terry, may I ask you some key issues coming up and what we can expect to see in the alliance?
Sure. So first, I just wanted to say, can you hear me? Okay. Thanks to the East-West Center, Korea Economic Institute, and the Chey Institute for this publication of this very valuable report. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the US-ROC Alliance. We did really come a very long way since the US got involved in the Korean War, defending a new nation that was carved out of the ruins, in the greatest conflict in history. US and ROC troops first fought and bled together to throw back the brutal North Korean onslaught. Ever since then, for 7 decades and counting, US and South Korean troops have stood shoulder to shoulder, guarding the ramparts of freedom along the DMZ. And since then, we have really safeguarded a tenuous peace and made possible one of the greatest economic miracles in modern history. Today, US-ROC Alliance is more important than ever. We're talking about defense, but sadly, I want to just talk about 3 points. The threat from North Korea only continues to grow. North Korea, in fact, tested more missiles last year than any given year in history, so nearly 100 missiles. And then this year, obviously, they tested some 30 missiles. They have manufactured ICBMs that are capable of hitting the United States with a nuclear warhead. Just last week, North Korea successfully carried out a first ever flight test of Hwasong-18, a solid fuel ICBM, which is harder to detect and harder to preempt than liquid fueled ones. While this latest technical milestone may not be a game changer per se, this does mark an important advance in North Korea's goal of building nuclear arsenal that could directly threaten the United States. And there seems to be a very few impediments preventing Pyongyang from proceeding down this path that it has chosen in terms of modernizing and expanding their nuclear arsenal. The intensified US-China competition and Russia's invasion of Ukraine made the world even more bifurcated, more polarized. And what we are seeing is Moscow and Beijing that are unwilling to pressure North Korea and unwilling to implement sanctions. And so North Korea has a favorable external environment to continue down on this very dangerous, destructive, and potentially deadly path. That said, that brings me to a second point after North Korea issue. The US and ROC alliance now extends far beyond the menace from North Korea. While North Korea remains a bigger threat than ever, that I just talked about, consider the impact of 2 recent events that have really shaped the international landscape. And here I'm talking about growing US-China rivalry and then Russian invasion of Ukraine. The challenge that's posed by China in particular demands that the aperture of the US-ROC alliance to really should widen considerably. Identifying China as a driver of US-ROC alliances planning and coordination will have a profound impact on US-ROC alliance itself. And most immediately, that means for Seoul and Washington, I think they should adopt a shared principle that Chinese concerns have no role to play in alliance planning and consultation, that alliance decisions will be driven by what is best in the interest of the two allies, whether it's discussion about enhancing defense capabilities or data integration or trilateral coordination between US, ROC, and Japan. China should not receive any kind of veto over decisions made for the allies' own defense by democratic allies. And lastly, let's not forget about Russia. Putin's invasion of Ukraine is obviously inflicting terrible suffering to the people of Ukraine, and it further complicates Seoul's relationship with both Beijing and Moscow. But it does provide Seoul a greater opportunity to diversify and to strengthen its alliance relationships. In particular, I think this is an opportunity for Seoul to expand its global partnership with the US and its allies in Asia and in Europe. And we saw last year, South Korean President Yoon join other US allies in the Pacific Islands, in the Pacific, when he attended the NATO in Madrid. That really signaled the commonalities of purpose between liberal democracies in Europe and Asia. We are all threatened by growing power of regimes such as Vladimir Putin's Russia. So South Korea has not only stood with the United States in the wars in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Today and in the future, it will stand, right now it is standing with the United States in aiding Ukraine and sanctioning Russia. The bottom line, Korea matters to the US-ROC alliance, and US-ROC alliance hugely matters to also US and South Korea, and or vice versa, right? The two allies continues to collaborate on North Korea regionally and globally on a whole range of defense issues. And the part of alliance's focus needs to continue to be on promoting democracy and freedom and human rights. And the Korean War is history, but the alliance born out of that terrible conflict continues to be an enduring and important feature of international landscape.
Thank you, Sumi. That's a terrific overview of both where the alliance has come, the traditional challenges that it faces, the kind of new ramparts it's moving on, and the challenges and the opportunities, frankly, of the alliance going somewhat beyond just the peninsula. So I really appreciate those comments. Scott, I would like to hear some views from you about where the alliance is going on the defense front. We've had all kinds of issues in the alliance, whether there are issues about nuclear weapons, about OPCON, operational control, about control of forces on the peninsula. Look forward to your comments, Scott.
Okay, well, thanks, Satu. And it's really hard to follow Sumi. I was really gratified that earlier this week she allowed me to moderate an economic panel where all the optimistic and happy things are rather than just focus on security. But now I see I'm back to the security front. But I do have a way of trying to be optimistic because I happened to be in Seoul on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the alliance. And at that time, there was a lot of angst about the relationship in Korea with the United States. And of course, there was the incident where the two schoolgirls died that really roiled the environment. Tammy Overby and Tom Hubbard are the, other people who will recall all this, vividly. But at that time, there was also Donald Rumsfeld who was talking about, well, maybe we should take US forces off the peninsula. And so what is striking on the security front in this report, in my view, is the section on the alliance, which shows how the alliance has, rather than receding from the peninsula, it's really gone global. And the driver for that, in my view, the most significant driver is the 2009 joint vision statement between the US and South Korea, which actually, I think, helps to frame and enable things like cooperation as related to China that we're seeing unfold now. And it also enabled the U.S.-South Korea security partnership to extend to many other areas as shown on the map in the report. And so I think that that is really significant. But the other thing that is striking to me about the 70th anniversary versus the 50th anniversary is that we've been up to now looking to the past and talking about how the alliance was forged in blood. And with apologies to Sumi and other people who were with us earlier this week, I think that now at this moment, even though I'm supposed to talk about security, the alliance in the future, I think, is going to be powered by chips, batteries, and clean technology. And that has relevance for security cooperation, very much so. This week, we're going to see the two leaders talk about deepened information sharing, cybersecurity cooperation, and space, and all of those have economic and technological dimensions. And we've been working on military technology cooperation for a long time. It goes without saying that South Korea now has exports that are complementary in the context of trying to promote global security. And so that is really significant. And the other thing that I want to talk about just a little bit is this bilateral security relationship. Because of the joint vision statement, it's possible for it to be embedded in other forms of multilateral security cooperation. And the most significant and relevant one is really US, Japan, South Korea. We're seeing that trilateral take off in a variety of ways and really deepen. And I think that that's going to continue in one form or another. But also, I think that we're seeing South Korean military engage with NATO, as Sumi's mentioned. There are a lot of ways in which the US and South Korean cooperation on the security and defense side are being driven by the changing security environment. And the last one that I'll just flag as one that I've been watching and I think bears continued scrutiny is how the US and South Korean navies are able to work together with each other in an environment in which there's greater contestation in the region on maritime security related to the East China Sea and South China Sea. And so, in some, compared to the 50th anniversary of the alliance, where there was a lot of angst and a lot of concern about the durability of the relationship, I think we're now in a place of real confidence. And a lot of that is built by, is based on the broadening base and actually convergent views about how to deal with the world on the basis of our common values that is really driving us to be able to expand beyond security cooperation, but also to bolster security cooperation as a component of the alliance relationship.
Thanks, Scott. What I really, of the many things I took away from your wonderful remarks is that sense of trajectory continuity going upward in the alliance, notwithstanding government changes on both sides, the changing circumstances. I was particularly struck with the capacity coordination between the US and Korea in the region, perhaps on arms exports and other things, and of course, the maritime space. But another element of the region, Youngjun, you and I have had a chance to talk about this, and you're such an expert there teaching at the Korea National Defense University, is this whole issue. We've talked about US, Japan, Korea trilateral, important defense minilateral, security minilateral, but also in the region is AUKUS and increasing US, Japan, Australia coordination as well, separate from AUKUS. And I wondered if you could say a little bit about Korea's place in the region and its evolving security architecture, as well as in the context of the US-Korea alliance. I know that's a lot.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me today. And I'm very appreciative for this golden opportunity with my friends Sumi and Scott and Satu today. And I'd like to say about briefly about sharing my son's story in the Fairfax County Public School. He don't speak English very well, but he every time finish their left school or something like the BTS music is all around, and all American friend is very kind to him, and he always be proud of be as a Korean. So I was surprised because the 2 decades or 3 decades when I study here, even some people in the Midwest don't understand who's South Korea, who's North Korea. So now it's a golden opportunity for being a global partnership. So when I write a history book on the ROC-US alliances, over the 7 decades, all about North Korea, North Korea, North Korea. That's why Korean people, every time you hear for President Summit, Korean side always talk about North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, but US side always talk about China or Soviet Union in the Korea. So it's a difference between the perception and strategic objective. But now, interestingly, when you talk about who is the #1 unfriendly country among the 60, 70 age of Korean people in Korea, they definitely say 100% North Korea. How about 50, 60 age of Korean people when they're young, 1980s, 90, we call 운동권. They say when they were young, is talk about unfriendly countries, the US, because of the several issues at the time. But now, when you ask about teenager or 20 age of Korean people in Korea, they ask unanimously Chinese regime. That is a different from the over the 7 decades. What is the future our role? Because now it's the Korean future generation is talk about more being global citizen rather than just Korean national citizenship, talking about unification again and again. So now is this generation would like to talk about more Chinese and Russian aggression. That's why President Yoon now is more openly talk about we have to stand with the Ukraine and Taiwan, the other countries together. So next 7 decades will be story about global partnership on Chinese-Russian challenge against the global regime, rather than only talking about North Korean issues. So we can talk about, you're saying about the AUKUS or trilateral security partnership, which we clearly aiming at not just North Korea, definitely North Korea, but we have to talk about more openly now global challenge in violating international law and human rights. So now it's time to talk about for the next 7 decades with our future generation and future American children about a global challenge, including Chinese, Russian, not just Chinese people, Korean, Russian people, Russian regime and Chinese regime. We have to be stand together against for the next 7 decades. That's my thinking.
Thank you, Youngjan. That's really an important point about the generational change in Korea. And it strikes me, if I put the three of you together in an equation, the traditional challenges of the new ones, Russia, China, and what Scott has been saying about the trajectory upwards and the continuation of the defense alliance, and what Youngjan said about the, if you will, the social infrastructure changing around generational views of where Korea sits in the world, given its enormous economic progress, soft power progress, et cetera. It's only natural. So I want to thank you for making that important point. I hope you'll join me in thanking this terrific panel. They'll be here through the reception, I understand. So if you want to corner them for further elaboration, but thank you so much for joining. I would like to welcome the next panel. We heard some official U.S. views, but I'd like to invite Barbara Weissel and Dr. Hyun Jung Jae and Esperanza Gomez Jalalian to join me for a quick discussion of some key economic and commercial issues. We heard some official views, but we thought very importantly that we would get colleagues from a range of organizations. You please look at their background. They have enormous skills, experience, expertise, knowledge. But what really attracted me was that all of them represent a kind of work that the Korea Matters for America report highlights, which is business, local contacts. And Barbara Weissel is now in private practice, but was the lead negotiator for the TPP when she was at the U.S. Trade Representative Office. So my point is they really are working the issues related to Korea-U.S. interaction on the ground, and we want to hear from them. Let me start with Dr. Jae, please.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much inviting me to such a wonderful and meaningful event. So I assume that many of this audience don't know much about the Korea International Trade Association. We represent more than 70,000 Korean trading companies. As you can imagine, Korean companies, since the Korea is a small market, most of the Korean companies are involved in trade in some ways. So we have so many members. So I came to DC about 1 year ago as a head of a Washington KITA office. And I met so many people from Hill and think tank and the governments and association, you can imagine. And then after I collected hundreds of name cards on my desk, I found that many people in DC, they know more about North Korea than I do. And then some of people in here in the States, they watched more Korean drama than I did. So, but I found that something was missing because when it comes to economic relationship between the US and Korean economy, I found that there are not many the experts of the Korean economy, and then people here in DC, they only know the Samsung, LG, and Hyundai because they directly access to the consumers. But in Korea, there are so many multiple Korean companies, not only the big chaebol, but also the small and medium-sized companies which trade with the US and which invest in the US for the past some years. So, and so I you know, at some point I made up my mind to make a beautiful booklet or some book to show how important Korean companies are for the US economy and then the job creation. And by chance, I met Satu. And then I found that the East-West Center, you know, they have been doing a great job to publish this meaningful booklet for the past more than 10 years. So thank you for saving my time. But now I'm working on, it's like the additional version of this Korea Matters for America and America Matters for Korea, because I think I would like to highlight more on the specific Korean companies, which are very important the US economy at the moment. So here today, I would like to emphasize more on the Korea companies really matter for America, not only economic standpoint, but also from the perspective of supply chain and infrastructure and environment and security, which is the most important agenda in the US. Maybe not only the US, but all the global world. So maybe maybe until 10 years ago, I think that the Korean companies viewed US as only the exporting market. Because we are successful in the US market, we got so much confidence that we can go global based on the reputation that we got in the US market. But I think that for the past 10 years, the economic landscape dramatically changed. So for the past 10 years, Korea investment in US, since 2016, it exceeded $10 billion a year. And then last year, it reached up to $27 billion. This is a new number. I think you can find that number in the book. So anyway, so based on this investment, Korea and the US trade a lot, increasing rapidly. And then not only trade, but also joint ventures and the business cooperation between the two countries rapidly increasing. So I think that now the Korean companies, whether see the US as only the exporting market, rather they seek more the economic cooperation and partnership in the US. And already they are making a contribution to the US economy, and that we are really creating jobs all over the place in the US. So we all know that there were 3 very important resolutions in the past 2 years: infrastructure, CHIPS, and IRA. It was, in Korea, well, we have some problems, but anyway. So these are all for the America's competitiveness in environment, infrastructure, as I mentioned. But we all know that America cannot achieve these objectives alone. So I think the US needs allies and partners more than ever. So, but already I think that if you go in the Georgia, Alabama, in many places, not some states, but all of the places in the states, you can see already the American workers working for Korean companies, they manufacture batteries, battery components, and solar panels, and transformers, and automobiles, and auto parts. So as I mentioned before, not only big chaebols, but also Korean SMEs, they invest in the States. So maybe some years, by the time the 5th edition of this book will be published, then I really hope that more partnership and more successful stories will be well highlighted in the book. Thank you.
Dr. Chey, thank you so much. And I'm sorry that we had already created a book that you had also thought about doing. But for the 5th edition, I will be calling on you for supporting very granular. And I hope we can work with you and Kaida to do programs across the US to highlight the US-Korea business relationship and company relationship. So thank you for being here. Barbara, a longtime friend and colleague. Barbara, we've talked about IPEF. You were there over the chorus years, but now we're at IPEF. Say a little something about where the US-Korea economic frontier is now and where it's going.
Well, thanks, Satu, and it's really nice to be here with you and with my friends. I guess what I want to start with is saying I'm really excited about this too. I've always been excited about your Korea Matters, your Everybody Else Matters, because I think these are very, very useful documents, booklets, especially on the eve of a summit, a state visit, to have this information out there and to be able to look in detail about the relationship without people having to look up these numbers. It's all right here at your fingertips. And I think the thing that is particularly useful, and I found useful when I was in government, which I was in for a very long time and contributed to this over the course of that time, is the state information, because I think it's very hard. People look at numbers and they look at the overall trade relationship, and it's large and impressive and it's been growing and that's great, but they don't really always have a clear sense of how that affects companies, where companies are locating, how that's affect a worker state by state. And so you lay that all out and the relationships with the states, which I think not only is important for reasons that Jesse's laid out here, but also because, the states need to understand this. And so I think that's very helpful. I just want to say a couple words and maybe be a little bit more blunt about economic policy and where things are going. We used to have, when we talked about trade, we talk about trade and an affirmative trade agenda, and we would talk about some of the trade frictions that we had, but mostly it was about trade per se. And now when we talk about trade, we're talking about trade/economic security. And so when you think about the discussions that are going on and where things are between Korea and the US right now, we have to divide it into those economic security areas that people are looking at and talking about, and how that reinforces the economic relationship, the security relationship, and then separately the more affirmative trade strategy. So on the economic security side, there are a whole series of dialogues going on now on all of the issues that matter to the companies that are investing both ways. We have companies looking, dialogues looking at supply chains for critical minerals, emerging technologies, semiconductors. And I'm sure before I got here, you talked about these at length and what's going on in all of these. And there are numerous dialogues on these, on supply chain resiliency as it pertains to semiconductors, but just generally, there's discussions on how to coordinate on investment screening and export controls, on economic security measures and policies generally. These are all good. I think for those of us outside the government, it's not always clear who's doing what on these and how they overlap, and whether or not they each have a distinct purpose and why we're doing it in multiple fora like that. But I think in general, the idea that the US and Korea are coordinating more closely on these issues in an era where economic security has taken is such a priority is very important, and it's good that the two countries are working closely in this area. I also think the trilateral cooperation, which was mentioned in the last panel, and spills over into this area is going to benefit. All of these dialogues are going to benefit by that trilateral cooperation, which will feed into the efforts to build the economic relationship So on the sort of more defensive side and how we're thinking about these issues, there's a lot of work going on. I wish I was clearer about exactly what each of them were doing, but let's leave that there. On the more affirmative agenda, we have IPEF and the work that's going on in IPEF. And I don't know if you talked a bit about IPEF in the previous panels, but just to be very brief on what's going on in IPEF, there are 4 pillars, so-called pillars in IPEF, which is different than a normal trade agreement, but the pillars are a trade pillar that is sort of looking at the traditional trade issues. Then there's a supply chain pillar, a clean energy pillar, and what I call a good governance pillar, but I think it has some other name. And each of these are operating as separate and individual negotiations that are supposed to support the goals that the countries share of building their trade relationships, more resilient supply chains, promoting a energy transition and a digital transformation and good governance. So all of these are admirable goals. I think when I look at what's going on here, when I was in government and doing TPP, as anyone from the Korean side knows, I had tried to talk Korea into joining TPP, was never ultimately successful at doing that, but now we're working on IPEF together. And I think that, as I said, I think the goals are admirable. I would say 2 things just briefly in conclusion about where I think policy's headed. There are a lot of elements here that are good, common goals that are good, areas that we're working on together that are important to both sides. But I think for both on the defensive side and the dialogues that we're having there and the goals that we have on the defensive side, as well as on the more affirmative side, I think we need to be very clear in the United States about the tensions in US policy between measures that are promoting reshoring of supply chains and the separate and parallel calls for working with allies and partners, because those tensions have not been reconciled and they are causing friction in our relationship. And it is very unclear to our partners exactly what it is we are trying to achieve or how we see that tension resolved. On IPEF, I think, as I said, I think the goals are important goals. I think it's important that we be as ambitious as possible in our efforts to achieve those goals. What's been put on the table so far, I think, is not enough. And so I would just leave it there.
Thanks, Barbara. And I love the framing of the affirmative and defensive side of the relationship, because I think that's where all of these key allied relationships are going to be straddling in the coming years, is the affirmative and defensive side of American trade policy, but also of the needs in this new global economic environment. And I can't help but say in this context, the East-West Center under our president's leadership, Susie Vereslum's leadership, we just hosted the U.S., Korea, and the Japanese National Security Councils for a dialogue on supply chain resilience and technology in Honolulu. And that was very breathtaking and eye-opening about some of both the challenges and opportunities of simultaneously managing affirmative and defensive nature of the evolving commercial environment. So as always, thank you, Barbara. We're delighted to have Esperanza Jalalian here from the Executive Director of the U.S. Korea Business Council. Love to hear a business perspective on where we're going, given what you've heard. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Limai, for the introduction and the congratulations on the 4th edition of the report. I'm delighted to be here in such a distinguished company and, appreciate the invitation to speak today in organizing this timely discussion before the summit. I'm speaking today from the perspective of someone who works closely with American companies operating in Korea. And as many of you know, the Chamber's U.S. Korea Business Council is comprised by many companies. We have about 50 plus members that are across all sectors of the economy operating in Korea. And as I always say, not only investing, but also creating jobs in the U.S. and Korea. We look forward, we're actually looking forward to the visit next week, as many of you. We're very excited. And we're also delighted to have the opportunity to host the business forum with our partner, the Federation of Korean Industries, next week. We're looking forward to hosting the president And ahead of this visit next week, I think would be timely for me to speak today about some of the priorities of the U.S. businesses as we look at this summit next week. We have been strong supporters of the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement. And as I say this, I'm looking at Tammy Overby, who used to head the Asia Department at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And she was probably the first one who taught me more about the chorus while I was working on another portfolio at the Chamber. So I had a great mentor in that case. At the outset, I'd like to highlight the support of the business community for the U.S. and the Korean efforts to expand cooperation beyond traditional issues, security issues, given our alliance, and has developed into a strong and comprehensive strategic partnership over the past 7 decades. We would like to see many business priorities addressed in the Biden Summit next week, and want the leaders of both countries to use the opportunity to achieve mutually beneficially resolution of trade barriers that are existing, but also preventing those that could potentially arise in the future. In terms of what areas we at the Chamber will kind of have it in different buckets. Digital cooperation, of course, at the top. We would like to see the summit advance technological cooperation between the two countries. The U.S. business community seeks to be a trusted partner in Korea's digital transformation initiatives. We welcome efforts of the U.S. government and Korea on the launch of a digital economy working group between the Commerce Department and Korea's Ministry of Trade and Industry and Energy under the bilateral supply chain and commercial dialogue. So we'd like to see what comes out of the summit next week. We're looking forward to hearing. IPEF, I don't really have to spend much of being said today. We see some potential areas of collaboration. Specifically, we are thinking about digital trade, an enforceable digital trade agreement that builds high standards. The U.S. has already negotiated such agreements with Japan, Mexico, and Canada. And such language could serve as the floor for digital rules for IPEF. But as mentioned, to make a positive difference in the region and beyond, the IPEF needs to be more ambitious, have more ambitious outcomes. On healthcare innovation, we have several U.S. companies in the pharmaceutical industry operating in Korea. And we would like to, as a key priority, to see development of an ecosystem for healthcare innovation. We support Korea's drive to become a pharmaceutical hub, and we're open, it's open to expanding its partnership in Korea in an environment that both fosters innovation and sustains access to existing high-quality health products and services. We want to see greater cooperation between the governments and the business communities to re-energize the bilateral healthcare dialogue based on a commitment to strengthen cooperation and the conditions that support innovation and patient outcomes. Climate change and promotion of energy evolution is out of the bucket. And the USKBC, our program welcomes the bilateral commitment of last year's summit to strengthen cooperation and lead in the areas of clean energy and look forward to renewed commitment in this area. Both countries are natural partners in the energy evolution and decarbonization efforts. They have both pledged ambitious decarbonization commitments, and we would like to just add encouragement for both countries to collaborate and promote energy sources such as liquefied natural gas and accelerating the evolution to a lower carbon economy. We, in the last one that I will mention that also has been addressed, supply resilience. We want to highlight the continued importance of bolstering supply chain resilience bilaterally and multilaterally with like-minded countries. Korea is a valuable partner in the U.S. government's efforts to strengthen supply chain resilience against future crises. And in this process, the private sector should be a part in the dialogue and process to ensure that policy recommendations reject punitive approaches, new trade barriers, and one-size-fits-all solutions. So I appreciate the
you.
opportunity again.
Thank you, Ms. Lillian, for those remarks. And like you said, we'll be following very closely the summit, and I'm particularly grateful to you for flagging the LNG and energy part of the U.S.-Korea relationship, because so much of it vectors these days on automobiles and hybrids and electric vehicles and batteries and minerals and supply chain. But I think the energy is a really great opportunity. So thank you for flagging that. Please join me in thanking this panel.
Thanks for organizing.
Our final panel is just two colleagues joining out. We unfortunately, Mr. Andrew Park could not join us from the Sejong Society before we break for the reception. And the East-West Center is devoted to people-to-people relations, and we always try to have a panel on the people-to-people ties and the relationship. Please, Dr. Kimmerno, please. Unfortunately, one of our people-to-people relationship panelists is joining us by video because he could not be here, but he's very important. And he's been a longtime collaborator of the East-West Center and friend supporting U.S.-Korea relations. And that's Dr. Abraham Kim, Executive Director of the Council of Korean Americans. And he has a short video. Toya, if you would take it away, and then we'll turn to Dr. Kim Renaud for just a couple of minutes of remarks to close the session. Thanks, Susan.
My name is Abraham Kim, Executive Director at the Council of Korean Americans. We are the premier national leadership network from across public and private sectors working to amplify the national voice of the Korean American community. Congratulations to the East-West Center for their new publication, and thank you for inviting me to speak on the growth of people-to-people connections between the U.S. and Korea. I wish I could be with my fellow panelists in person today, but ironically, my reason for not being present is because of the amazing growth of interest about Korea among Americans living in all corners of this country. I'm actually in Bozeman, Montana, on the campus of Montana State University with a number of Korea experts to talk to students, faculties, and local leaders about U.S.-Korea security, trade, and diplomatic relations. We are commemorating the 70th anniversary of the U.S.-Korea alliance and also educating a new generation of young people on how this important bilateral relationship has grown and matured over these last decades. Tomorrow, we are speaking to Montana high school students about what is on many teenagers' minds when they think of Korea. Yes, you guessed it, BTS, Blackpink, K-pop, K-movies, and K-dramas. It's both bizarre and surreal that Montana students know more about trends in Korean culture and music than I do. Plus, many of these students are choosing to study abroad in Korea and want to learn Korean language. I share all this to highlight how far Korean cultural influence and the people-to-people connections have reached over these last many years, and how Korean culture is very much shaping American culture and even the minds and interests of teenagers in remote Bozeman, Montana. A second important milestone this year is the 120th anniversary of Korean immigration to the United States. On January 13, 1903, 102 Korean immigrants arrived in Honolulu to work in sugarcane fields. Today, there are more than 2 million Korean Americans living throughout the United States. Many of these Americans of Korean descent are serving as important bridge builders and citizen ambassadors that are reinforcing the strength of U.S.-Korea relations. As an example, I want to return your attention to the city of Bozeman. I'd like to share with you about my friend, Iho Pomeroy. She is a first-generation Korean American who moved to this remote and rural state close to 30 years ago with her Montana-born husband and veteran, Derek. Missing her mother country and wanting to do something in her new home community, she decided to do what she could do best: cook Korean food. she started Iho's Korean Grill. At first, she could barely fill the restaurant, serving her strange foreign cuisines. But one by one, with her unquenchable enthusiasm and resilience, she won over the palate and stomachs of Bozeman citizens with her homemade kimchi and kalbi. Now, one cannot find a single seat during lunch service and dinner service at her restaurant. Plus, she packages her Iho branded kimchi and sells them at local grocery stores and supplies Montana chefs with this amazing ingredient. But the story does not end there. 10 years ago, once Iho won the stomachs of Montana citizens, she decided to win their hearts by running for local office in Bozeman, Montana. She ran for the office of one of the 5 Bozeman City Commissioner seats, so she can both serve and govern Bozeman citizens. She won her election and went on to win 2 more elections. In her role as commissioner, she worked hard to attract Korean businesses, students, and leaders to Montana. Most recently, Honda Motors established a new R&D center in Bozeman next to the campus of Montana State University. In sum, Iho serves as a Korean cultural and culinary ambassador and a proud American public servant. Iho's example demonstrates that it does not take a big corporation or powerful DC politicians to make a critical contribution to building bridges between the US and Korea. Sometimes it just takes a single individual with a passion for Korean culture and a love for their local communities to make a difference in US-Korea relations. The amazing fact is there are many Korean American pioneers like Iho throughout the United States in local communities and neighborhoods, sharing their Korean culture, their history, and interests. Collectively, these people-to-people connections are making a huge difference in increasing mutual understanding, strengthening connections, and reinforcing bilateral US-Korea relationship today and for generations to come. Thus, in conclusion, I just want to thank again to the East-West Center for this opportunity to speak to you all and share how Korea and Korean Americans matter, not only in places like Bozeman, Montana, but also across this wonderful country, the United States. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Satu.
I know that in Washington, especially on the Hill, we have very serious policy and economic and defense and alliance issues, and those are important, critical but I really love these panels about those kinds of stories, about commerce, about culture, about people. And it's really easy to do in the Korean case because Korea's hot, hot, hot. It's hot on movies, it's hot on culture. I was hoping to have BTS for the reception, but I failed, but hopefully my boss won't hold it against me. We also have with us another very interesting perspective on the US-Korea people-to-people relationship, and that's Dr. Young-Ki Kim Renault. She is the senior advisor at the George Washington Institute for Korean Studies at George Washington University, a very important university in the US-Korea relationship. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I am honored and very happy to be invited to speak today by 3 dear places. I am from Korea, and I got my PhD at the University of Hawaii, and I live in DC. So at the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, DC, it is written, "Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answer the call to defend the country they never knew and the people they never met." To this moving passage, I want to add, and we celebrate the beautiful friendship and the flourishing of the 2 peoples brought together by destiny. Last century was the low point in the long history of Korea, of foreign occupation, of fratricidal war, and political and economic troubles left Koreans poor, demoralized, and with little hope. These abysmal experiences ironically put Koreans in contact with foreigners in an unprecedented way, making them arguably the most cosmopolitan people on earth. I was fortunate to grow up in a family that welcomed visitors. My father was a rare bank executive who spoke English, and my mother, possibly the only writer who spoke English too. We lived in a hanok, a traditional Korean house with Western facilities. Foreign dignitaries were sometimes brought to us by their Korean hosts to show them a Korean home. This is how we met Pearl Buck, the Nobel laureate in 1960, and John Updike in 1970, among distinguished foreign guests at home. Pearl Buck made 7 more trips to Korea after her first visit for her humanitarian projects. Her novel about Korea, The Living Reed, states with an often quoted sentence, "Korea is a gem of a country inhabited by a noble people." Koreans established a philanthropic foundation, a research society, and a museum carrying her name, and present symposia on her life and literature regularly. This has to be beaten by actually America itself. I had an opportunity to reconnect with John Updike in 2005, 35 years after his visit to my home. Here is an excerpt of his note I was delighted to receive. The picture of her, my mother, and me together seemed to come from very long ago. You have awoken pleasant memories of an enchanted visit. One of the most memorable people who came in uninvited was a young soldier who couldn't resist ringing our doorbell after hearing a piano trio piece we were playing. I do not recall his name except that he was of Czech descent. He was a pianist himself, and we played some simple music together, laughing a lot. Such an encounter apparently was not unique to our house. Sergeant Vernon Williams was a 19-year-old American soldier who played the French horn in the 8th Army Band. To know Koreans better, he auditioned and was chosen to join the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra in 1967. Now president of the old Primero Historical Foundation, Dr. Williams tells us how his Korean connection gave him a chance to meet Pearl Buck, who had noticed the Seoul American playing in this Korean orchestra. His American Army band supported an orphanage. The band once played for the orphans, but the orphans sang for them in English, wearing colorful hanbok, traditional Korean costumes. One of our dearest visitors was David Sutton, a journalist who later would become a longtime editor at the Chicago Tribune. David remembered our family in an obituary for my father as follows. When I was a young soldier stationed in Seoul in the early 1960s, Kim Jin-ung and his family virtually adopted me into their family. Whenever there was a dinner party at his home, Mr. Kim made it a point to invite me. The other guests often included government officials, foreign diplomats, writers, artists, and even a string quartet. Quite a heady assortment for a 20-year-old who had never before ventured out of his country. Mr. Kim treated me as a peer in his august company. Some years later, Mr. Kim's son, Hogi, arrived to pursue postdoctoral studies at Northwestern University, and his father, Mr. Kim, came to visit. As he departed, Mr. Kim implored me, my son, to visit him again in Korea. Tears streamed down his face as he backed out of the door and I cried too. I hope and pray that somehow he will know that he and his family changed my life forever. In 2008, David and his wife, Barbara, attended the 16th Hanmusu Colloquium in the Korean Humanities at George Washington University. My mother would have been 90 years old, so we decided to make it a kind of family reunion. A few months later, David passed away. Delivering a eulogy for him at his funeral mass, I felt both happy and sad. Recently, I met Elias Vaughn, a Korean major at GW and the recipient of this year's Sejong Scholarship. Elias' fascination with the Koreans started with their respect and care for others, especially for the elders. Koreans appreciate Americans' belief in democracy, individual freedom, and human rights. Learning about each other, followed by self-reflection, Americans and Koreans have become the beneficiaries of all these qualities that make a human life whole, beautiful, and meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Lovely. What a lovely, personal, and meaningful way to end this program on Korea-US relations. Heartfelt, real, individual, but also country to country. And in that spirit, and before we break, I just have to say thanks to a couple people. Of course, I have to say, if I wish to be employed on Monday, the Board of Governors of the East-West Center, I thank you. To President Susie Vereslum, thank you for your continuing support of our programs, including this one. I thank the members of Congress who provided this room. I want to especially thank Mr. Spencer Gross. If you see him, I hope he's wearing a large sign, for his extraordinary effort in putting together this publication, and actually 5 Asia Matters publications over the last year. With an entirely wonderful team at the East-West Center in Washington. I also want to thank LaToya Jackson, who you've seen doing videos, handling the virtual live stream, handling contacts with speakers, handling RSVPs single-handedly, along with our KEI and Chey partners. And of course, the entire East-West Center Washington teams. To our partners, Ambassador Park, Mark Takala, I thank you. We look forward to the next series of events. For those of you who are congressional staffers, our congressional staff program on Korea kicks off next month, and we hope that you have either applied or will take part in a future iteration. We're very grateful to be working with KEI on the congressional staff program on Korea. And now, in the spirit of people-to-people relations, please join us for refreshments and drinks, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.